Executives often complain about the lack of time they have, when in reality, they have all the time there is. The issue, of course, is how they're investing their time. In this presentation, Dr. Terry Paulson offers helpful ideas about how managers can make wiser time and priority investments. Dr. Terry Paulson is a psychologist and author of such popular books as 50 Tips for Speaking Like a Pro and Paulson on Change. A prominent platform presenter as well, Dr. Paulson is a member of the International Speakers Hall of Fame. Let's join Dr. Terry Paulson as he talks about how to develop a time investment strategy.
Today we're going to discuss developing a time investment strategy. How many of you would agree that you're tired of hearing words like work smart, cost containment? How many of you agree cost containment is not going away? Our real challenge is, how do we manage cost controls, but at the same time strategically invest the resources necessary to invent the future? That's what's involved in working smart. How do I get the right things done? So today's topic allows us to look at practical insights that will allow us to do that as leaders. First point, have a strategic time investment strategy. We will never have enough time to do everything. Every single day, you're given 86,400 seconds. We spend some of it, we waste some of it, and we invest some of it. When you add your team collectively to that, we realize it's how we use our time that determines whether or not we're going to be effective. It's been estimated that in the average home, a television can be on 7 1/4 hours a day. Now, when you hear that, you go, I don't know what home we're talking about, but realize when you come home, typically we turn on the television for background noise. It's the cheapest way to have a party without having to have anybody there. In fact, if you don't like one group, you can turn to another channel. But what ends up happening, we wonder where our time goes when we have habits that interfere with our ability to get the right work done. The key point that I want you to focus on from the very beginning is the importance of having a strategic focus to your prioritizing process. Every single day, I ask myself the question, what's the best use of my time today? If you've ever struggled with people who work for you, who don't seem to manage their time well, there's an easy way to do that. Ask them the question every day, what are the 3 principal things you're going to work on today? First time you ask it, they'll know you've been to a seminar and you're acting bizarre. But if you continue to ask that question, all of a sudden it hits them. You expect them to have a plan and to invest their time wisely. That's the job of creating a strategic focus to your time investment plan. Make sure you're investing your time where it counts. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon.com, said, our wealth vanishes the moment we stop doing a good job for our customers. Every single time we look at working smart, we ought to put the customer in the front lens, the people we serve, and say, is what I am presently doing making a difference for that person? If it's not, we ought to change our time priorities and make sure that we are investing in the things that actually do count. The next point is, avoid the kiss of yes. That is a chapter in Guy Kawasaki's book, Rules for Revolutionaries. He said that the danger that many companies have is that they say yes to far too many things. As a result of that, they don't have the energy to say yes emphatically to the strategic focus that is most important. That means you have to learn to say no to people. How many of you have had times where people have asked you, they'll come up to you and they say, are you busy? I love that question. No, just waiting for you to come. Of course I'm busy. Now, I don't say it in that tone, but if somebody says to me, are you busy? I say, yes, I am. But what is it? I realize that every interruption that I have, every change in priorities, takes me away from the strategic focus that I have for my day. It is my responsibility to emphatically and frequently say no to things that come up. Because if I don't say no, I won't have the time and energy to do the things that really matter. As a result of that, think of your people's time the same way. I oftentimes will have an idea and I'll share an idea, and all of a sudden, hours later, my secretary will come back and she'll say, here's what you talked about earlier. And all of a sudden I realized they took my side comment as though it was a priority. You have a lot more impact than you know on the comments and the work of your people. I immediately say to Nancy now, let me tell you, this is not a primary priority. This is something to put on the back burner, but it's something I want to look at a later point. Keep your people focused on the things that matter most. Tom Peters, along with many others, talks about the importance of companies being tight and loose. Most companies are tight or loose. When things are going well, they get loose. Hey, you need equipment, buy it, here's money. You need people, hire them, hire. As soon as things get tight and the economy begins to turn the other way, they say, we're tight all over. You need money? You got to be kidding me. Take up a collection. It works well at the airports. You need people? Have children. They will grow. For some of you, this will be a bigger commitment. You see, excellent companies give a very different message. Be tight everywhere that it is off focus to our strategic vision. Be tight where you can, and invest resources where it matters most. Your job is no longer saying do more with less. It's do the right less with more. Too many companies are too democratic in how they deal with funding problems. Instead of upsetting a department, we say we'll have cutbacks in all of the departments. What if really moving strategically means I've got to make sure that I take 20% away from your department and give it to another department? That's a tough leadership decision, but one we need to make. I work with one company where the award they gave for exceptional leadership went to a supervisor who went to his immediate boss and said, in looking at this contract and the amount of costs that are tied into it, we're not making money on what we're doing. And at the present way it is structured, we are not going to make money. I suggest we say no to the contract. I realize this may mean my job. I am less concerned about me. I'm more concerned about my people. I've got great people working for me. I just want to make sure we find a place to use them. He ended up getting an award for leadership by ending his own job. The interesting thing with that kind of vision, they made room for him other places within that organization, because you need leaders that are able to focus on the things that really count. Be tight where you can, loose where you can make a difference. The next point, have a daily plan and use it. Every time management expert, every person on priority throughout history has always said the importance of having a plan. They talk, however, about the planning paradox. People say, I'm so busy, I've got so many things to do, I don't have time to plan. And besides, there are going to be so many interruptions, why have a plan when you're going to have to change it? That's like a lumberjack saying, I've got too many trees to chop down, I don't have time to sharpen my axe. The responsibility is to understand, whenever you start your day, having a plan gives you your choice point. Sometimes 5 minutes invested in a really important item is worth far more than handling and getting things off of your to-do list. You see, how many of you are guilty of this? Whenever I have a to-do list, I get satisfaction of crossing things off. Do any of you experience that? Every day, oh, another one. That's why at the start of the day, a lot of people are just crossing off the easy things to get them out of the way. Then your interruptions start because everyone else has finished their easy things. And then they want to ruin your day. And so we run around doing insignificant work. Our challenge is stay focused on your plan. I don't care whether you use a time system. I don't care if you use Day Planner. I don't care if you have Palm Pilot or you just use a scratch of paper. Have a time in your day where you focus on what is priority. I use Alan Laken's system of A, B, C priority. A, must do today. Most important. Will not go home without this done. Those items I'm going to number, and I get busy at the start of my day getting done the things that I have to get done. B, important will soon become an A. If I can make any progress on it, I like it. C, insignificant on the present scope of things, but if I get time, would like to get to it. The biggest danger we have is on days when we have time, we don't use our time. We have a tendency to waste it. Hey, I've got time. So we get busy doing insignificant things, having a lot more conversations and times, but we're losing our focus. If you want to be effective with your own time management and the time management of your team, make sure you encourage everybody to have a plan and use it. From that, it allows you to make all those choices. When any interruption comes in, I ask myself, is it better for me to continue to stay focused on the priorities I have, or to adjust that and take on something that's new? I have found when somebody interrupts me and I say, I'm busy, I say at the same time, if it's important, I'll have the conversation, but just let me make a note about where I was going. As soon as I use that note, what does the person realize? I was doing something that was significant. Oftentimes they'll say, if it's that important, why don't you get back to me later? And then I use the note to write back their extension, and I have a note to remind me to get back to the person. People will give you the luxury of using your time wisely when you do honor them and get back to them later on in the day at a time when it's more effective for you to communicate and talk. My goal is always making good use of my time. That's what I keep focusing on, and I challenge my team to do the same. Have the strategic focus, have a plan, and adjust on the basis of whether or not what you are interrupted by is more important. If you feel frustrated at the end of the day that you did not finish many items, gradually start adding important interruptions to your to-do list and cross them off. It makes you feel satisfied. And at the end of the day, you have a record of the fact that you did some significant things and you accomplished something. Because how many of you agree? We manage ourselves first. Oftentimes we spend our days going home at night thinking about the things we didn't get accomplished instead of thinking about the things that we do. Keep your focus on priority and catch yourself being effective and allow yourself to do that. All right? So have a plan and use it. Next point. Have a mission-centered measurement system. Think about that for a moment. How many of you agree you play differently when you know somebody's keeping score? If I'm out shooting baskets with the guys, and we're just shooting around, it's one kind of thing. But as soon as somebody says, we're playing to 21 and loser pays, I immediately know it's a different kind of game. And I get far more intense. Okay, now we've got a game and I've got to win. I believe one of the problems of time and priority management is we don't create meaningful measurements that allow people to create a scorecard and establish an early warning system that allows them to be aware when problems occur. That's why time factors are so important. If I'm able to do that, I increase the likelihood that people will understand that issues are important and we need to surface them early. So have a meaningful measurement system and at the same time realize that if you have too many of them, no one will pay attention to any. How many of you have found that when managers come in, they may start to keep some record, but when they leave, no one looks at it? Not only should you have meaningful measurements, but you should limit them to the things that are really important. What are the measurements that you need to keep visible to create the scorecard? And what are the measurements you need to stop so that you can free your people to look at what's really important? I like to ask CEOs, what are the measurements that keep you up at night? I want to know what are the measurements that are important to you, because my job is to make sure those measurements are good and that we surface the problem early. The next point is delegate with high expectations, but manage priority shifts. Peter Ueberroth was in charge of the U.S. Olympic Committee during the 1984 Olympics. He started every planning session with the same sign. Lack of planning on your part does not constitute a crisis on my part. Now, that sounds a little cold. And yet he always warmed it up with this statement or a variation of it. We have only 16 days for the Olympics. We cannot postpone it. People are coming to town. So if I have given you any responsibility, it is your job to get it done on time with excellence. But if you have any trouble doing that, get to me as soon as you're aware of that so that if we have to make a priority shift and move resources, we have time to make that possible. All of us know the importance of establishing time frames, but we frequently forget to let people know in the real world, sometimes you have to make priority shifts. You see, I believe in taking it one day at a time, but some days, more than one day, attacks you at the same time. It's our responsibility to make sure that we are building a responsive style that allows people to come to us early if there is a problem. How many of you grew up and crammed on certain tests or projects? How many of you are guilty of doing that? I was guilty. You always knew you could have time, and so you could wait to the end and you'd have time to get it done. The challenge today is that we have so many things we're trying to juggle. There is no time to get caught up. What happens is people play juggler. How many of you play juggler? Oh, you get things, oh, yeah. Some of you feel you shouldn't even be here today because you have so many things back at home. And you come back and you go to your boss and say, hi, I have too much to do. What does your boss say to you? Oh, we'll give you time management. Oh, shit. Pretty soon you're juggling all these things. And then they go to a program on change. Oh, this is good. You're trying to get all this stuff done. Now, here's the interesting thing. When you get near the end and you realize you don't have time, most of us go to our manager and we say, I didn't want to tell you this, but tomorrow we die. I love it. When do you want to know if there are problems? As soon as you notice it. Because if I have to move resources, I need time. One manager called it the 4 times rule. He built in a commitment to no surprises. For every unit of time you're going to be late, give me 4 times the warning. You're going to be an hour late, give me 4 hours. Going to be a day late, give me a week. Going to be a month late, give me 4 months. Because you no longer are staffed with enough people to get everything done last minute. Cost overruns are not accepted. Having people to continue to do more and more just burns them out. How many of you agree we end up burning out our best people? We go to our good people and we say, work, and they eventually say, well, what did you ask so-and-so? Well, Jim, you're the only one that can do it. Our responsibility is to make sure that we keep people paced, focused on what's effective, and are willing to come in and give adequate resources when we need to. Who are the people you need to communicate the importance of a priority shift to in your work environment? That's one of the challenges we need to make sure that we focus on. Final point for today's session. Balance your professional and personal commitments. Balance is an important word that you hear a lot about in leadership. But the problem with balance in today's world is that commitments for business, timelines, and appointments get into your calendar. Personal commitments don't. How many of you say to a friend, let's get together soon? Well, soon never comes. You try and get 2 calendars together. You ever done that? Okay, what's the day we can get together? You go through it. Okay, years from now, we'll eventually have that event and that experience. If it doesn't appear in your calendar, it's not important to you. Lily Tomlin said, the trouble with a rat race is that even when you win, you're still a rat. I think it's a great line, and it reminds us of something. I don't want to lose my vitality in what I do to be a professional. If the only thing I do is work, I lose my perspective and the reason for doing what I want to do. In fact, my wife was good at helping me with this. I love what I do. I love presenting. I hope that shows. I was doing far too much of it. We had not had a vacation. We were not spending as much time as was necessary. And as a result of that, when I came home from a long series of programs, she let me put my stuff away. I thought that was a nice touch. Then when I came down, she said, we need to have a conversation. And I said, certainly. And she said, I know you love what you do. And I know you make a difference. I get to read the letters. Men in this room, how many of you realize I'm in deep trouble right now? This is not going well for me. You've heard it before. And so I was riveted by her focus. And she said to me, Terry, I didn't marry you not to see you. And I want to make sure you love what you do, but I want to make sure we still have our time together. That was a critical turning point in our relationship. Now, I don't know. She may have said that to me at other times in other ways, but on that particular day, I heard the message. Think about it for a moment. How many of you would agree? In your dating phase, you spend a lot of time together. That is the sales phase of your relationship. I love you, you love me. Oh, let's talk. Let's go out tonight. Bingo, bingo. This is exciting. Now, as soon as you become married, what happens to your frequency of dates? It begins to go downhill. Pretty soon you're saying to somebody, we haven't talked in ages. Well, halftime's coming up. Maybe we can talk then. And what ends up happening is we put ourselves into a position where we gradually lose our balance. Make a long story short, we had a great conversation that night, and what we decided to do was to buy tickets. How many of you agree, when you have season tickets to something, you go? Once we've bought these things, we know we're going to use them. So, as a result of that, I don't even care if we're romantic that night. We're going. We paid for these things. We're going to the show. As a result of that, it changes your behavior. See, when you have tickets, your day goes differently. Would you not agree? On days you have tickets, what's different about the day? It goes much faster because you're anticipating going to the show or the event. We go to our boss and say, I've got tickets. I want you to know, don't come to me at 3:45 telling me you have some vision, all right? I've got tickets. I'm leaving at 4. As a result of that, you get a tremendous amount of work done. How many of you agree? On days you have tickets, you get, what's the secret of life? Have tickets every day. And be willing to give them up when you really have to give that time to your customers and to your people. How many of you agree? Some days you have to give up tickets. But it shouldn't happen often. I believe if you lose your vitality and your energy and your relationships, what's the value of all the money that I've earned? I actually believe that one of the biggest dangers we have is that you will burn out your gold, your best people. Most of you know who your best people are. You go to those people over and over again. They won't tell you they're going to leave. They just send around their resume, and when they're burned out, they leave. Even worse, they come to themselves and say, why am I busting myself over this when other people are paid the same thing and they're not doing any more? Your job is to make sure they find balance in their lives, and at the same time, on the day, they make good use of their time. I also find that it is not just your spouses that are important. Some of you are not married. How many of you agree? If you want to spend time with somebody, schedule it. Once it's in the calendar, it's going to happen. The people that you most want to spend time with are usually busy people. If you don't schedule it, you don't see them. Schedule time with the people that are important. You see, if you ever complain that you are not getting out of your life what you want out of your life, it is your responsibility to realize prioritizing is not just business. It's putting your calendar where your priorities are. And when you do that, you're effective in managing priorities and in working smart. Let's summarize the key points from this session. First of all, have a time investment strategy that makes sure you invest your time and the time of your team in the things that matter most. Secondly, make sure you have a daily plan and you use it. Once you have the plan, it gives you your choice point. Avoid the kiss of yes. It is too easy to do too many things and avoid the focus that allows you to stay on the things that matter most. Learn to say no so that people can check the priorities and stay on the things that count. Also, establish meaningful measurement systems that allow you to establish early warning and an opportunity to create a scorecard for your effectiveness. When you're playing the great game of business, you need to be aware of what winning is. And finally, have balance in your personal and professional commitments. Buy a few tickets and make sure your calendar reflects your values and priorities. When it does, I guarantee you that you'll be in a position where you're managing your priorities and you're working smart. Thank you for attending today's session.